Good morning and welcome, everybody. I'm Linda Kandar. I'm the Regional Director for MMA in MENA. I'm going to welcome you guys today to our clarity session, When Data Conflicts, What Drives the Decision. It's brought to you by Digimotive, one of our members. And today I'd like to welcome my guests, Hiba Al Zain. We have Country Director of Sales from Digimotive. We have Rami Rihani, who's the Chief Marketing and Communications Officer for Al Sulaiman Group. And we have Ahmad Shatila, who is the Director of Brands and Communication for Gathern. And let me tell you a little bit about MMA before we start our session. So MMA is, I'm so sorry, Zainab, we're able to see your screen and it's not the presentation. So MMA is a global media and marketing alliance, and we are by CMOs for CMOs. Our work is concentrated on bringing knowledge and frameworks and scientific approach to marketing so that it's not so much opinion-based or guesswork for the CMOs. So we make sure that we have people in our membership that are from the different sides of the marketing industry, and they can all contribute to sharing knowledge and best practice and know-how and lead the marketing industry in the right direction. So we have our board of directors in the Middle East. It covers the full region, but we also have an executive board specified for Saudi because it has a different marketing ethos. And we are community powered. So we work with our community through committee work, through academy work, through events, through webinars like these ones, and that's how we reach the market. We also have our Smarties program, which most of you know about. It's our awards program. It's the funner side of the MMA, let's say, where we get to celebrate the industry and the great work that is being done, especially from, a technology point of view. So yes, creativity matters. Yes, efficiencies matter, but also using the right technology to deliver our messages has become the most important part of the marketing industry, and that's why Smarties is concentrated on the technology that delivers. Just as a reminder, we have both Smarties Saudi and Smarties UAE are now open for submissions. So please make sure you submit in time to be considered for the awards. And now, today, let's get to our subject. It's a very discussed, let's say, on a very common subject that we discuss amongst marketers. Data has changed our life, and marketing probably has been the most impacted, let's say, industry out of all the industries when it comes to technology. We have disruption on the daily, and data is becoming the driver and the disruptor in most cases. So when data is conflicting, what drives the decision? So this is the main question today. So data is everywhere, but decisions still need to be made fast. Sometimes we're slowed down by considering data too much and too long. And this session will explore how brands and their partners are using data to take action in real time, from performance signals to audience insights and scenario planning. The focus is on how teams cut through complexity, prioritize what matters, and combine data with experience to move quickly and decisively. So I'm going to start the session with Hiba. Hiba, when data conflicts, what helps teams move forward with confidence? because you guys are on the receiving end of the team's, discussions, and they want you to come up with answers quickly. So
True. So actually, we went from too little data to too much. And honestly, too much is harder.
yeah,
So teams now, we mentioned that they are keeping adding dashboards and reports, thinking it's progress. But it's not. It's just creating more noise and less clarity. So everyone has the data now. Let's shift from which data matters and start thinking, what decision am I trying to make by
yeah,
using this data? Let's take an example, a brand running a live Ramadan campaign and needs completely, in my opinion, and actually this is the normal, needs completely different signals to use different signals from the data, the bulk of data they have access to, than another client or the same client who's trying to run a back to school campaign. So at the Gmotive, we sit on a data pool that is around 700 million unique devices across MENA that varies between retail, publisher, and behavioral data in one layer. The power isn't the scale, it's the precision. So we can isolate exactly the right audience in the right market and the right moment by using the relevant audience. Since these data that we have access to is categorized into multiple categories, it would be better and more efficient to use the relevant segment.
yeah, yeah. That's such a good point. It's like so much data. What
Yes.
what do we want out of it, rather than everything it's telling us? It's all
Yeah.
that information available. Okay, from a brand point of view, Rami, um, you have, of course, data that, like, first user data that you can use, or agencies that you go to. What helps your team move forward with confidence when it comes to the data? What kind of strategy do you guys really concentrate on?
So, as maybe what Hiba mentioned, brands have abundant amount of data captured in multiple means. So it's not. And today the challenge is how to make sense of the data and navigate through the decision making process. It's a simplified, let's say, triangular approach where we have the macro and the market data. It's out there. It's something that's accessible by a lot of brands, and we're talking about market share, possibly competitive understanding, consumer confidence, share of wallet, share of and this aspect is out there, and those signals will help a little bit navigate on the macro and market. But also, the second component in the triangle is the consumer and customer and the brand health. So this is the data that usually brands seek to understand a little bit on perception, health, brand pulse of how the brand is being perceived by the consumers and the customers, customer satisfaction scores, etc. And of course, under each, there's a lot of depth in terms of parameters that will be looked at. And then the third is the performance. This is the set of the internal data that is, captured different KPIs, looked at on daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly basis. What's very important is that teams don't go into the rabbit hole of deep diving to the data. However, what is important is to make sense what is a good enough data and insight to kick off the action. So in our perspective, if any of these two components in the triangle are aligned, this is validation by itself. If let's say the macro and the market is saying the same thing as what we're seeing internally, then it's good enough to conclude and move forward. However, as things get, if there's a complexity in the efforts and investment and the risk, and we're going to talk about it in a bit.
Yeah.
This is something that more data validation of the entire triangle is needed in terms of deep dive as well.
Yeah.
So it's very important to connect the dots, go high level, Validation doesn't need to be very thorough, as long as two perspectives are saying the same story.
Okay, that's a very good point, and it takes us to the next question. So I'm gonna give this question over to Ahmed. Like, has having more data made marketers faster or more cautious decision makers? And in your opinion, is that a good thing, whichever answer you're gonna give?
So I think, hello everyone, first of all.
Hi.
I think I want to recircle back to the idea of having abundancy with data itself. So we're living in an era that a lot of data is emerging, lots of dashboards, and now with the tech tools that we're having, every establishment is having so many tech tools, so many dashboards, that we're losing track exactly what are we looking for and what we're finding exactly. So building some kind of a process that allows us to take quick decisions with an agile environment is very important.
Yeah.
That will bring us to a very important topic, which is exactly understanding what is important to the business and setting specific priorities that later on could be impactful and non-impactful at the same time. If at the same time having not enough information is going to draw back from specific decision making, instead of doing that, simply go for less information with the decision, which is even better than having no decision at all. And in many cases, I think it was Jeff Bezos which mentioned the 70% rule, which is technically if you have 70% enough information about a specific topic, go for it.
Yeah.
Instead of just waiting for the 100% of affirmative information and certainty. And at the end of the day, perfection is not going to happen in the tech world. So, yeah, understanding exactly what matters to the business, taking quick decision, and understanding the agility of the market. Specifically now, there's changes happening when it comes to trends, promotions, offer, competitiveness, market evaluation, and fluctuation at the same time. So this will reflect as well on having a very quick and agile decision making.
Okay, great. Okay, let's go back to the agency point of view. So Hiba, before campaigns go live, how important is scenario planning when it comes to data management?
So actually, scenario planning is very essential because it shifts from reacting to change to anticipating it.
Yeah.
The question is no longer whether something unexpected will happen, but how prepared we are when it does. So strong scenario planning creates decision pathways before the campaign launches, allowing the teams to move quickly when market conditions, consumer behavior, or performance trends change. So it transforms.
Like in real time, if there's a negative reaction to the campaign, you would have another pathway during.
Exactly.
Okay.
So preparing multiple scenario ahead of taking the campaign live is an ideal option, or it's better to take the campaign live, or wait for the report or the client to escalate any problem happening during the campaign is live in order to take the decision. So preparing a scenario ahead of time or ahead of taking the campaign live would be better for the campaign itself, for the KPIs and the campaign objective to be achieved.
Okay. So Ahmed has what signals matter most when validating whether a decision is the right one? So you've planned with your agency, you have your pathways. What is the signal where you go, okay, something is happening? What is it, if you can put your finger on it?
Look, I think there are two signals technically. Definitely, the first one will be business drivers. So, what are our business drivers? The second signal is, does it make sense to the consumer as well?
Okay.
So, for many reasons, and I think it's obvious that everyone will look for a business sense when making decision. That's very true. But at the same time, if we make sure that we have some kind of a balance between a customer success and a business success, I think that will be the right formula when it comes to taking selecting KPIs and taking a quick decision as well.
Okay.
And
Rami, how about you? Like having more data, like makes you have your decisions faster. Like in your company, is it a more cautious approach, or do you also wait for signals? How do you do it?
So it all depends on three parameters:
Can
efforts,
we go to the
risk.
next slide?
Yeah, maybe
Yeah.
it's the next illustrated the next slide. Efforts, risk, and investment. So obviously, when it comes to and this is a brief illustration, and of course, we're trying to resolve the decision-making paradox here and try to facilitate and navigate our decision-making process. If obviously, if it's a low effort, low risk, low investment, it's a minimal validation needed in terms of data, and then we need to hit the road running. Less consensus is needed. As if when it goes to a moderate efforts, risk, and investment, this is more cross-functional alignment is required. Additional validation might require. It depends on that. But in that perspective, of course, as Ahmed mentioned, in the moderate part, it's agility is key. It's not about getting everyone's buy-in and waiting for things to get done. It's how agility can play a role. Now, of course, when we go into a highly strategic component where the risk is high, efforts or any of these three parameters might be tuned and to be high, this is where we look into an executive validation, extensive validation, and the executive alignment. There might require also further analysis in terms of the parameters that we're looking into, and the greater consensus, obviously, on across the company. So these are the three, the parameters that we look into. If we can go next to the next slide, how it navigates us through the decision-making process. Obviously, the lower quadrant is light and fast. The middle is more calculated assumptions and more agile into how we approach it. And of course, at the end is more thorough and collective as complexity kicks in.
So as the risk goes up, the level of decision making slows down.
Absolutely. Or it's a matter of there should be a broader consensus in the decision making.
Okay. Yeah.
And not it can be any of these two parameters or three parameters colliding: the effort, the risk, the investment.
Okay. Great. Okay. Is it okay if we share with everyone that is here today this part of the presentation, because it's a nice way of mapping out? Okay. Absolutely. Great. Excellent. Okay. So
Linda, if you can allow me here, just to add on what Rami is saying, I think it's a very nice chart of how to calculate risk at the same time. But at the same time, and building on what Rami have mentioned as well, which is agility, sometimes managers or leaders in the market lose the sense of what is going to impact me of not making the decision.
Yeah.
So yes, there is a risk of business, but let's say if I delayed the decision, what would be the risk of the delay itself? So there's a lot of leaders who just focus on the business risk itself rather than looking at the potential win that could be done or achieved while having a quick decision.
So can we call it the opportunity cost here?
Exactly.
Okay, so the opportunity cost of slow decision making when data fails is not calculated in your view, and something that we need to consider. I mean, that's a great point. Thank you, Ahmed.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm also taking my notes because I am a little bit of a nerd when it comes to marketing. So I learn from all of our guests always. Okay, so Hiba, with the amount of data that is out there, everyone has access to data, either directly or through agencies like yourselves. What actually creates a competitive advantage for a brand now? How they use the data to create a creative advantage?
So, as you mentioned, data itself is no longer a competitive advantage because everyone now has access to data.
Exactly.
The advantage comes from three things: the ability to identify the right signals, the agility to act on them quickly, and the discipline to align decisions with business objectives. So, in many industries, the gap between leaders and followers is not who has more information, it's who can turn information into action faster and more consistently. And the winners want to be the organizations or the agencies or the suppliers with the most dashboards and reports, etc. They will be the organizations that create clarity from complexity and turn insight into action at speed.
I think that is the main concept here, especially during the, let's say, challenging times that the Middle East has just gone through. It was interesting to see a lot of campaigns shifting in real time. You know, I don't know how much the data was actually depended on at that point. It was much more human force majeure. But I would like to hear from the brands, like what happened at that point. Was data a decision factor for you, or did you just have to, wait and see? Or I would love to hear from the brands what happened in such a case where it's not expected. All of a sudden, everything, someone has put a wrench basically into all of our plans. So, Rami, if we can start with you.
Yeah, I think it's a valid question. We in unprecedented times, how can data lead us into a more informed decision? One aspect is it's very important to look at trend lines, and we need to give it some time. We don't need to conclude and jump on the cord, especially when we go back to the axes of efforts, risk, and investments. We look at the trend lines, we give it some time, and then this is something that we can look into. Is it a temporary phase that we're passing through, or this is something, a new reality that we need to navigate? So this is one aspect. The second aspect is how driving accountability in the decision-making process, especially in business as usual or in unprecedented times. What is the leeway that each leader has to do and navigate through? And that accountability is fully based on trust and fully based on the responsibilities gathered there. I want to tap into another topic that already Ahmad mentioned about the cost of acting now versus acting later.
Yeah.
This is something that also is it something that we need to weigh off? Is this something that we want to wait? And what's the cost of waiting? And not necessarily it's on unprecedented times or tough times or challenging times, but sometimes as marketeers, there's trends that we need to capitalize on, that we need to create relevance into it, and so on and so forth. So it's very important to weigh off the cost of acting now versus acting later. And the last part is what's the strategic priorities of the brand? If today's data is still, we need to rethink this findings. Is it something that's still directionally relevant to what the strategy is? Then we don't need to steer the decision-making process. And this is something that I go back to the trends. In some cases, short-term decision-making, it's in unprecedented times, it's very normal for any organization to take. However, we need to look at the long term. Are we compromising today on something that we're looking for the future? So this is where the data should come and tell us, yes, we're still on that track, and we don't need to steer from that. So these are the four spectrums that helps us in business as usual or unprecedented times to look into what matters.
Excellent. Okay, Ahmed. Sorry, Hiba, go ahead.
I just wanted to add an example on what Rami just said. about the decision, how to take and how to be more cautious when taking a decision. So imagine a farmer checking the weather forecast, and the data says there is 40% chance of rain tomorrow. But the farmer steps outside and he feels the wind and thinks it's going to rain tonight. So he starts harvesting immediately while everyone else is waiting for the forecast to update. That's exactly what experience does in marketing. It moves you faster than data can. So our market is deeply cultural and seasonal.
Yeah.
I'll go back to the Ramadan example. The first week always look slow, engagement is low, and people are adjusting their routines. And if you only read the data, you would probably pull back your budget or panic. But experience tells you this is normal. Week 2 is when purchase intent explodes. This is the time to prepare, not to pause the campaign.
Yeah, that's completely valid. When we were talking with Ahmed, it was also you mentioned we have like pre-calls to talk a little bit about the subject we're discussing with our panelists. So this is information for the attendees. And Ahmed had a very nice concept that they follow in their company, which is teams identifying their North Star metric that matters the most and following that. So following on Rami and Hiba's point on, keeping the strategy in mind, keeping the overall brand objective in mind. How does the North Star concept work for you guys?
Look, I think there's two important points that have been mentioned. First of all, the human factor, which Hiba have mentioned as well, and the North Star that you've just highlighted, and we've discussed this as well, Linda, before in our previous sessions. If you look at the main question, which is how to evaluate data and decision making during conflict, we need to understand that marketing in general, from a business lens, is an expense.
Yeah.
So we need to admit, yeah, we all love marketing, but when it comes to the CFO or the CEO or whoever is looking at it from a business sense, it's at the end of the day, it's an expense. Right. How can we make sure that we transfer this expense from an irregular expense to an expense that's actually adding value to the business? And this is exactly the tricky or the thin line of making good decisions from a marketing lens during conflict. And going back to your question or your highlight, which is priorities, this is exactly where we need to look at. We need to look at priorities. Are those priorities adding value to the current period that we're currently attending for, or adhering to what's the current situation that's happening in the market? If yes, then yes, we're heading into the right decision making. So sometimes shifting priorities is very important. But before shifting priorities, as you highlighted, Linda, it needs to be highlighted. We need to have some kind of a North Star that, you know what, this is exactly what's driving the business. And specifically in leading cross-functional communities or cross-functional team members, every member will have his own North Star. So for example, for performance, it's simply acquisition. Social, it's engagement. Brand, it's brand health, or even views. And the list goes on when it comes to CRM, open rate, and so on. So what is driving the unit, or what is driving the whole team, is some kind of a North Star that is also driven from a business lens that can later on be judged and evaluated and prioritized during conflict. So this is from my angle as well, on my point of view. And going
Okay.
back
I
the
want to
big
ask you
factor.
something. I'm going to
Yeah.
let you go back, but since you just highlighted a very important point, which is different stakeholders in the company will have different North Stars. What if
Yes.
the North Stars do not align? And the CMO is in a position where they have to convince other people to let go of their North Stars so that the company's North Star in general is where we're all headed. So, because I've seen CFOs really resist, their North Star is profit, and if the marketing campaign or activity is not showing return on investment, especially in times of conflict or in times of questionable performance, how does a marketeer or how does a CMO really push through that haze?
Look, I think it goes back to a very simple formula. If now I would tell you let's say we have 10 KPIs, and I would tell you remove 7 KPIs from those KPIs. Would the company still run with those 3 KPIs? If yes, then those are your KPIs. As simple as this.
So yeah, shifting the North Star should actually like the KPIs should be leading to everyone's North Star, and there should be the 3 main North Stars in the company that everyone needs to work towards.
100%. We all love engagement, but if we drop on engagement, would that affect the business? No.
Not
Then
really.
this is one of the things that will need to be removed, and so on.
Okay, fair enough. And you're saying, circling back, sorry, I cut your...
Yeah, circling back on the human factor. So at some point, and building on Hiba's reference, which was Ramadan, and since I'm also coming from a tech and FMCG background during food delivery, we noticed that during Ramadan, the behavior of orders and food ordering as well changed completely. So people tend to order pre-iftar or after iftar right away. And this will allow you as well to change the behavior completely when it comes to understanding the culture and also understanding the consumer habit. So, as Eva highlighted, if someone is looking only at the data, you would simply say that Ramadan is not doing well. But it's actually not targeting people in the right timing and not adhering to the consumer habits that is being created or generated during Ramadan.
Yeah. Okay, these are excellent views. What's an example of a moment where acting quickly mattered more than having complete certainty? Like if you can give us examples from your company specific where, okay, guys, let's remove all data, let's remove all decisions, let's remove all opinions and act because something is telling us that. Can you pinpoint a point where you had that in your company?
So you're referring to making a quick decision without any data at all?
Yes.
Maybe not at the company, but I would always go back to the Netflix example, where Netflix simply shifted from a Blockbuster or VHS selling platform into a data or an e-commerce platform. There wasn't any data back then, but someone had the decision making and the boldness to say, you know what, I need to shift and to make this shift and make it happen. And I think this is exactly going back to the human factor. Human factors are built on instincts, and understanding that, you know what, at this moment I need to make this specific decision is very important.
Okay, it's an excellent example, and it's an example that we've seen over and over again in booking, in Uber, like things that have changed the status quo. It wasn't based on the data, it was based on instinct and someone seeing, like having a vision of a future that doesn't exist yet. So Rami, maybe you can take us through your...
I want to build on Ahmad's point. So not necessarily. So I think being part of a competitive landscape, everyone is reading the same thing.
Yeah.
It takes a brand to take a bold step against against what the norm is in a way. So to break through the clutter. Sometimes the data is saying all data is aligned, everything's correlated, but the brand, and we've done it, a lot of brands have done it, they've taken it a completely opposite stance to break through. In a market like Saudi, highly competitive, highly promotion offer led market, those who strike on brand amidst of a very competitive and highly promotion led landscape, they stand out, they become the talk of the town. And we've seen a number of examples. And this is where sometimes, yes, we should not take the data to a point that we become so safe and so underplayed and so in tune with whatever everyone is doing, but rather than saying, you know what, there's the opposite end of things. And yes, the human factor, what the consumer really wants. Maybe the market is seeking something, but the consumer is seeking something else. Strike there. That requires boldness, that requires courage, that not necessarily always on crunching the insights and try to play it safe. Sometimes there's a back, a fallback on when it comes to data. Brands become so safe, so in tune, so rational, and this is where it doesn't play on our side. It's very important that we need to have a little bit a rebellious mindset and unconventional way of how to look into driving the brand forward, and not to stick with just to be part of the crowd.
Disrupting the disruptor. The disruptor has been the data and how much we rely on it.
And this can happen on a product level, or even on a campaign level, on a tactical level, irrespective how big or small the thing is. At least being bold and courageous to take things that really stand out to the brand and what really resonates with the consumer's minds, irrespective of what the market and the performance is saying. This, we've seen it. It has a very positive uptake that we didn't predict there. So I do encourage marketeers to take that leapfrog. Thank you.
Okay, so Hiba, let's switch this question up for you a little bit, because you're on the data side. So without data, you cannot function as a campaign leader, let's say. But let's say that you see something that a brand doesn't see yet. How do you drive that message across to CMOs? Like, sometimes they'll make rebellious decisions, as Rami put. And I love that. But is it possible for the data agencies to actually see the shift before the brands see it? Or how would you respond if the data doesn't support the vision of a CMO?
So waiting for complete certainty can be a bigger risk than making a well-informed decision quickly. During high demand periods or major retail moments, consumer behavior evolves in real time. Brands can identify directional trends early and adapt their messaging, targeting, or investment allocation, often outperform competitors who are waiting for the perfect validation. So speed, when supported by strong fundamentals, becomes a strategic advantage.
Okay, and if the data doesn't support the decision, what do you do? What do you advise your CMOs?
Changing the channels, for example, each campaign has certain channels, target audience, investment allocated, KPIs, and objectives. Sometimes changing the channel itself of the campaign, allocating more investment on certain formats than the others, focus on certain KPIs that leads success to another KPI. This is how we can anticipate the risk and prepare a very well-structured scenario before the campaign failed.
Okay, fair enough. I'm gonna turn back to Rami and ask, when a decision is being made, is it better to have a big team that has a lot of opinions and a lot of data and a lot of information, or is it better, when there is a smaller accountable team?
Of course, it goes back to the three parameters that I've mentioned: the efforts, the risk, the investment. If it's low, we don't need to add complexity in the decision-making process for that will not add value. It's very important in areas where things are into the low moderate spectrum, we need to move fast. It's a very dynamic market. First mover advantage, sometimes it pays off. Of course, if those three parameters heighten up in terms of complexities, then yes, consensus is needed with the stakeholders that can play a valuable role into the decision-making process. And of course, it goes in line if it's a strategic call or it's a tactical call. This is all depends on what calls and how does it goes in sync with the long-term strategy. If it's just deploying the long-term strategy, then the decision has already been aligned. It's a matter of signing it off and deployment. So these spectrums, it needs to be taken into account. Of course, it's easier said than done when we operate in an organization where a lot of stakeholders, internally, externally, and so on and so forth, and alignment it's needed. The most important part, data should not paralyze the whole process. It should be on our own advantage to rationalize the decision and support us forward.
If you were to put a percentage on data versus experience,
I would say 30% data, 70% experience.
Wow. Okay, Ahmed?
There is a lot of notion where 70% of data means that everyone is just looking for the for the truth, and the truth is already obvious. And what companies and brands fall into the trap is that they just seeking truth and not having enough bandwidth to take action and execute. In some cases, the learning that comes from the execution outweighs the insights there.
Yeah.
So agility is key. Data is there, is just try to support us way forward to execute. Heavy weight should come into the decision in terms of execution. Data is not there to rationalize and re-rationalize as we move on. It's very important to correlate things out and say this is what needs to be done, and this is the execution plan.
Do you think that also depends a little bit on the kind of company we are talking with? I mean, some companies are much more safe in terms of their approach to marketing. And Ahmed, for example, have you noticed a difference because you've just moved from one company to the other? So maybe it would be interesting to also see, like, I know both of them are quite fast-paced, fast-paced, and both are quite advanced in their marketing strategies. But it would be interesting to know, like, how much would you say data versus experience, and then does it really depend on the company or the strength of the CMO to convince the company of that?
Look, I tend to disagree here a little bit with Rami. I would put more weight on data. For a simple reason is that if you're putting a lot of weight on personal experience, then you're validating your own opinion with data. Instead of using data to question yourself and question the status quo as well of the company and your colleagues as well, and validate. And in many cases, personally, I've changed my decision based on data, and I wasn't convinced. Like, for example, taking, for example, a very simple data decision. Like, for example, let's go for campaigns that are being, or creative that is being tested before launch. And we've done several testing with several research agencies. And for some reason, I would love the first execution, but the data says that the second is more appealing. We would go with the second and try to add our own experience to fix the second to be more appealing with more cultural relevancy, and try to go with data. Because personally, I would tend to put more effort on data rather than personal opinion. Yeah.
So what if you were to give a percentage, 50-50 or 60-40?
60-40. 60 for data and 40 for experience.
Okay, excellent. Hiba, what would you say?
May I just
Yeah, of
interrupt
course.
on this? The reason behind the 30/70, so at least it depends on every company, how they operate. When we put this a long-term strategy, this is where the data is at the forefront. The insights are very important. So the heavy lifting is already done strategically, and of course, there's a sense check every year on year. Are these the three parameters that I mentioned: the market, the market/macro, consumer, brand, and the performance are still reading the same signals? And then as you move on into the year, it's just a sense check, and rather than going and repeating the entire thing. This is where we're coming from. And yes, any decision making should be a data-led decision making. Of course, it's not hunch based. Today, this is obvious. However, when we look at the strategy versus tactical, strategy is where the heavy lifting of the insight should happen. Hence, and of course, as you move on year, there's a lot of experience, learning curve that the team will accumulate, trying trial and error based on the data and the experience. Then the experience becomes already the track record is built. Hence, best practices are built. Then it's more based on experience. That's the logic behind
it becomes statistics based experience. So it does come from data
exactly. It's nurtured. The experience is nurtured from data. Obviously.
From yeah. How about you, Hiba? What would you say the weightage is?
I don't see experience and data as competing forces. Data tells us what is happening, while experience helps us understand why it's happening and what actions to take. So if I had to assign a weight, I would say roughly 60% data and 40% experience for most business decisions. But the balance shifts depending on the situation, like more data-driven for operational decisions and more experience-driven when facing uncertainty or limited information. So the best decisions come when data informs experience and experience challenges and validates the data.
Yeah, that's perfectly valid. I think all of you have put your points across in such a great way, and we've learned a lot from all of you. We have questions in the audience, so I will open it for the last 5 minutes to the audience. We have Abdullah. Would you like to just ask your question? Ask to unmute. Abdullah Nefai. Or do we have other questions in the room until Abdullah writes his question? Maybe it's in the chat. Sorry. No. Abdullah, are you interested in talking? Okay. So he probably put up his hand and left it there. Any other questions or anything else that you guys would like to add before we summarize our session for today?
I would like to personally thank you, Linda, for hosting us here and MMA, I think, and to be alongside with the esteemed panel and the audience. It's a real pleasure to discuss a topic that we endure day in, day out, and every company we operate in. I think it's a topic that's worth tapping into, and thank you for bringing this across. Thank you.
You're most welcome, and this is exactly what these clarity sessions are about. They are to make sure that we have very honest conversations, and challenge each other and ourselves into thinking at a more strategic level on behalf of the industry, because we do get a lot of these questions as an association who's building credibility in our answers, and we make sure that we have the marketeers that will always have different point of views, as well as the agencies or the technology providers behind these technologies. So it's always a pleasure having such CMOs on our panels, and I again thank Digimotive for making this possible.
For the opportunity to be part of this panel. It was a pleasure, and I truly appreciate your invitation and the excellent way you brought everyone together.
Thank you. It's our pleasure. So, and Ahmed, any final words for the group?
I would like to thank everyone who've attended the panel, and you, Melinda, as moderator who've moderated this. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure being there.
Pleasure. Thank you very much. And this will be it will be on YouTube. So if you want to share it back with your LinkedIn followers or your business, and our sessions are also going to be at the end of the Clatiy sessions, which are 6 in total until July. They will be certified. So ask your teams to join. Ask anyone that you know in the industry that would be interested and that would be able to benefit from these. We would love to have them here. And thank you all.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think we have to ask